We are those guys. Hey, you see these guys over there? Well, what about those guys? I'm Alex Hardy. With me, as always, Nick Ferguson, former 10-year NFL safety, here to bring his expertise as we put a bow on week 2 in the National Football League. It is Monday Night Football. In full transparency, we got the Chargers and the Raiders going on right now. Look at your watch. Hey, look at us grinding late night. What's going on, my man? How are you, Nick?
What's going on, man? It's week 2, and we have some teams that are trying to separate themselves, and other teams we just really don't know who they are. So let's get
Well,
into it.
yeah, I mean, the Chargers clearly separating themselves from Vegas. We'll get into that a little bit more when we come back to preview week 3. As I mentioned, that game is in progress, but at the same time, we have seen Justin Herbert unleash that howitzer he has for an arm, and the Raiders defense, look, they can get some stops and held them to field goals a couple times, but really just do not have an answer for when the Chargers do uncork those explosive plays, which under a Greg Roman offense, Nick, I mean, maybe we could start here. For the first time that I've ever seen them, it's with the passing game. I think that's kind of fascinating. Through 2 weeks, that's who the Chargers are. They'll beat you with big plays in the air.
Well, as for me, I always thought that the Chargers of being that type of team. I mean, they have a quarterback in Justin Herbert that can actually make plays for them in the air and both on the ground, as we saw in the first game of the season against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think this is what this team wants to be. And I know Coach Harbaugh harps on the idea of running the ball with Amari Hampton and Najee Harris, but that is something that you want to do. Every successful team, they do a couple of things well. You have great, competent quarterback play, but you also run the ball just to kind of give you some balance. And if we look over the first 2 weeks of the season, there are a lot of teams that were playoff teams last year, but they don't have that pass-run balance as you need. And I think right now with the Chargers, man, they're in a good position. After this week, they play the Denver Broncos, who just lost to the Colts. So if you are the Chargers, man, you feel as though you're in the driver's seat.
Well, you mentioned those Colts, and I want to talk about some of those 2-0 teams. We will get to Indianapolis and that win that, you've got your thoughts on the Broncos and that final play of the game. So we'll get there, but the other Monday night game I'd be remiss to not mention. The other 2-0 team coming out, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sending the Houston Texans to 0-2 with a final drive. Baker Mayfield getting them down the field and ultimately scoring with that Rashad White, short yardage gain. I mean, other than the fact that that wasn't Bucky Irving, we saw Emeka Buka in the end zone again. They really were able to put a couple drives together, but that was really it. This one was kind of a slugfest with two overmatched offensive lines, great skill players on the defensive line for both teams, and really it just came down to the Buccaneers had the ball last.
Yeah, it did. This was a very interesting game because when you think about the Texans, I mean, they're loaded on the defensive side of the ball. So the question coming into tonight's game was, how effective was Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going to be? And here's what happens with a lot of these games. And we're seeing it showing early in week 2 of the season, but we're going to see more of that as the season starts to progress. It's teams finding a way to win close games because most fans, they have been told, oh, they have a great offense or they have a great defense or you have both. But when they get in games and they struggle to score points or they lose games, now everyone's like, well, I thought you told me that this team was a playoff caliber, a Super Bowl caliber team. But I always tell fans, pump your brakes and pause. This is the NFL. There's a lot of talent around this league. And as the Houston Texans found out tonight, that even with a guy like Nico Collins, even with some of the talented players that they have on their squad, you still have to learn how to close games out. It's not about how you start. It's not about the flashy plays, Alex. It's about can you finish? And with Baker Mayfield having the ball in his hands, putting the pressure on the Houston Texans defense to say, all you need is one stop. Just can you get a stop for us, please? But they couldn't do it. And Bucky Irving, man, dude, I mean, he was bouncing around guys on the Texans defense like he was a pinball.
Being able to extend those drives, taking time, precious time off the clock, it was absolutely huge. And now for Houston at 0-2, that's 2 losses by a combined 6 points. Right, a 1-point loss will do that to you, but this happened to them against the Rams as well. They weren't able to put together a touchdown drive in week 1, and right, it's a huge issue that Nico Collins isn't getting the ball as much as he should. He's not the type of a diva wide receiver. Plus, the man got paid already. So it's hard when, and I sort of get the sense watching the later Monday Night Football game, the amount of weapons that C.J. Stroud had to work with simply evaporated. Right? Even when Stephon Diggs was healthy last year, you had Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon. This time around, without Joe Mixon, the running game isn't able to get things established, and that offensive line just an absolute sieve. So there's a lot of potential in what was a good roster that won that AFC South division, which is still pretty winnable, despite what we've seen from Indy. But we'll talk about the 2-0 teams, but I think of the 0-2 teams, Houston has to be the biggest surprise that we've seen so far. So, Nick, the 2-0 teams, right? We talked about Tampa getting there, the Chargers well on their way, unless we have some late comeback, which we'll be thrilled to talk about the next time you see those guys. But other 2-0 teams that caught you off guard, I mean, you teased it before, the Indianapolis Colts. Let's talk about how things kind of shook out in Denver. And realistically, what happened to the Broncos on that final play that moved a 60-yard kick to a 45-yarder that ultimately let Indy go 2-0?
See, here's what I think about the Indy game. I think Indy is not a fluke 2-0 team. They play a Miami team that was said to be a playoff team, and they were going to revamp and change some things. And Mike McDaniels is a smart guy, which he is. And then you are facing against a playoff team in the Denver Broncos, a team that had a top 5 defense. So it was a great test for Daniel Jones for them to see exactly where are we as a team. But I would always remind you of this. Last year when these two teams faced off, Anthony Richardson was the starting quarterback. And this game was still a close game until Jonathan Taylor, running in for what would be a would-be touchdown, dropped the ball prior to scoring. That changed the whole landscape of the game. The Broncos scored 21 points in that fourth quarter, albeit on the part of the defense for 2 of those touchdowns. But I knew coming into the second week matchup, Alex, it was going to be a tough game. And as we saw with Daniel Jones, this is not a guy who is, or we can consider to be a bust. The change of scenery has done him well. And the one thing that Shane Steichen did, which I love about the game plan, was that he had Daniel Jones getting the ball out of his hands on time and rhythm. He had great decision-making. He found his receivers. He delivered the ball. He didn't even give the Broncos pass rush an opportunity to get to him, even though there were moments where they were at his throat, they were at his feet. He was able to back up and retreat, as they tell quarterbacks, don't ever do that. We don't want you. Step up in the pocket. Don't retreat. But he retreated either to the right or to the left, buying time, finding wide receivers, and putting it in perfect spots. So I guess you got to tip your cap, man, to Daniel Jones, or as they call him, Indiana Jones, because those dudes actually play well.
I mean, talk about a guy who looks like Jim Carrey, but is playing the role of Harrison Ford. It is really incredible to see the kind of stats where the first Super Bowl era team to go 10 drives without punting the football. And if he wasn't, Indiana Jones, he used to be Daniel Turnovers. And they haven't turned the ball over once. Throwing picks or, losing the football. It's really just been an excellent job by Daniel Jones, give the man his credit, but also Shane Steichen, who's done that kind of work to help lead other quarterbacks, such as Jalen Hurts when he was in Indy, and even getting the most, in Philly, and even getting the most out of guys like Gardner Minshew and other quarterbacks that kind of strolled through as they've been desperate to try to replace Andrew Luck all those years ago. So I'm interested. The defense has been playing really well. Also, you saw more of that against the Miami Dolphins. Chris Ballard has a type, and you were sort of worried that putting athletic, physical traits ahead of maybe some football experience at times or the right position fit. But, you really just have to congratulate the team on both sides of the ball for how dominant that they've been. Look, the 2-0 teams that make a lot of sense to me, Buffalo, Philly, Green Bay, we've talked about them all at length, whether going into the season or when Green Bay already adds the best pass rusher to a loaded defense. But how about the AFC North? And the only undefeated team left are the 2-0 Cincinnati Bengals that just lost Joe Burrow for what seems to be the next 3 months, albeit he could get a second opinion on that turf toe. But Nick, what the Bengals were able to do and rally behind Jake Browning, who threw 3 picks, and yet were still able to come out with that victory. They're slow starters, and the season could be lost without Joe Burrow, but it doesn't seem like the players got that message.
No, not really, because once again, when we look at the Cincinnati Bengals and understand where this team actually thrives, it's on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, you still have Chase Brown, Mike Gesicki, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase.
Yeah, when are you going to get to number one? When are you going to get to number one?
but the idea is, even with that being said, Jake Browning has had some experience in this situation before. So that
because Joe Burrow's been hurt before.
That's right. So that helps you out, but also it's not a long-term fix. Now, I don't know how true this is, but someone said to me today, there is a quarterback that is third on the depth chart in a New York City. Maybe the Bengals may want to eat a couple of W's with that guy. I don't know.
Is Jameis Winston, is he the answer for maybe 10 teams that have quarterback issues? Wouldn't he be great in Minnesota now that they've lost J.J. McCarthy for a week? Wouldn't he be great reuniting with the New Orleans Saints? Wouldn't he be great in Miami for the moment Tua gets hurt? Jameis Winston is just so charismatic, and we loved what he did with the Cleveland Browns last year. I feel like Jameis is the perfect fit, not just for Cincy, but for any team that just wants to have a good time. We're awakening the spirits because Jameis Winston's going to be a perfect fit, I guess, not on an NFL team, but in Nick's office as well.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess you mentioned the ghost of Jameis Winston. And,
we say his name 3 times, and he's going to pop up in the back of your office.
I guess what was that, like Candyman or something like that? But
that's right.
But, Jameis Winston is kind of like that everyday quarterback. He is that guy that you can count on, and it's having reliability at that backup quarterback position that really helps out. Now, could he service a lot of teams? Yes, absolutely. And here's the thing. Everyone loves their starting quarterback until that starting quarterback gets injured. And then it's on to the backup. And we've seen a lot of cases where the backup has come in. He's looked great because expectations have been really low for the backup. And then when he's thrust into the starting lineup, then he looks just like a backup quarterback of all things. So we'll just have to see how this plays out. But here's what the Cincinnati Bengals and Zach Taylor knows about Jake Browning. They can trust him. Even though, they was able to overcome the 3 turnovers, you're not going to do that against better teams. But if you are the Cincinnati Bengals, you're happy with the fact of being 2-0. But you're still a little down to know that you're going to lose your quarterback, Joe Burrow, for a couple of weeks.
It's pretty much a death knell. I mean, they go as far as Joe Burrow can take them, and maybe he comes back sooner than we expect. He maybe not, may not miss a lot of time, but he's going to lose a lot of what makes him great, and the issues, still kind of exist. He's under pressure a lot. He gets hit a lot, and those are issues that, fundamentally, hey, let's just add a bunch of big guys and the problem solved. It didn't seem to be the case for Cincy. Yes.
I got a question for you. So Joe Burrow has been injured a lot with the Cincinnati Bengals. We
yes,
know
he has.
It happened to him his first year. And I know he loves T. Higgins, but he really loves Jamar Chase. Do you think that it ever gets to a point where Joe Burrow is like, you know what? This team in Cincinnati is very cheap. I've been injured a lot. Maybe I should ask for a trade. Do you think we're in a situation where that would ever happen? Because it would be great. I know my father would love to see a quarterback like Joe Burrow with the Miami Dolphins.
You think going to Miami would solve all of his problems? I mean, with given the issues that they have, especially on their offensive line. Like, I know Cincinnati operates differently. You would know better than anybody, or at least anybody on this podcast. But it's one thing to not have the personnel. It's another to be the only team to not have a medical cart to be able to come out onto the field. So you're left limping off the field on your own, which is something that I read. Maybe you could corroborate, Nick. There are issues with paying people that aren't Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins within that organization. And look, this is the structure that Joe wanted. They wouldn't pay both of these receivers had he not requested it, but we've never seen a team this successful dedicating this much of their cap to 3 players, 2 receivers, and a quarterback. So there are going to be deficits and issues at other position groups. The year they went to the Super Bowl, they relied on Lou Anarumo's complicated defense that asks a lot of experienced veteran safeties. Those guys left in free agency, right? They never ultimately replaced them. The offensive line had holes. Amarius Mims has looked fine as a first-rounder, but not clearly the physical specimen we saw in the underwear Olympics. And outside of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Chase Brown, at times, this team fails to move the ball enough to make up for that bad defense. So he could ask out at some point, but there's almost pride. And there's the fact that he lives next door to his best friend from college. And he's an Ohio boy. Like, he's the guy that wants to turn this organization around and put them in the right direction. I think he's dedicated to it, but look, the comparisons to Andrew Luck, this is his 6th year. Andrew Luck hung it up after 6 years and 3 season-ending injuries. So time will tell, but I really am concerned about Joe Burrow as a player and the willingness to continue to rehab, put himself out there. Maybe he has other options like Andrew Luck does. Maybe he doesn't. You know, it's harder to become the GM at LSU than it is at Stanford. I'll tell you that much.
Well, you know, something you said, there is truth to everything we say, right? And
I'm always right. Is that what we're saying?
No, your wife would tell you that that's not the case. She is. But as the case with Joe Burrow, yes, you're absolutely right. He wants to win. He wants to do everything humanly possible to help get that team back to a Super Bowl and win. But I don't think there's a true commitment from ownership to help him get to that particular point. Because Trey Hendrickson spent the offseason not with the team, finally signed the deal maybe a couple of weeks before the season started. He's on a 1-year deal. And
they just handed him cash. They couldn't have figured that out months earlier, get him in the offseason program?
Once again, we're talking about the Bengals organization. They've been this way for a while. You think they're going to all of a sudden change overnight? Absolutely not. And with Burrow being injured for an extensive period of time, if this team cannot, with Jake Browning, win a couple of games while he's out, I mean, for Trey Hendrickson, he's going to be like, I already know what this movie or how this movie ends. I want out. I don't want the M. Night Shyamalan ending. I want to get out. And once again, you're losing one of your better defensive players. It only makes things harder for the Bengals and Joe Burrow moving forward.
Just frame of reference, Nick, Get Out is a Jordan Peele movie, not an M. Night Shyamalan. I just wanted to clarify that before we move on. I have a couple other 2-0 teams in the NFC West. The Cardinals and the Niners, both 2-0. And I kind of find it inexplicable. Well, not entirely, because the Cardinals beat the Panthers and the Saints to get to 2-0. So they've been really inconsistent.
Can we really count that? Does that really count?
A win is a win, Nick. You're the one who would tell me. But inconsistent play from Kyler Murray. Still unable to connect with Marvin Harrison in those over-the-shoulder, contested catch situations, those 50-50 balls that were his bread and butter at Ohio State. For some reason, still hasn't figured out with Kyler Murray. And then meanwhile, the 49ers have their injury issues. Compared to last year, everybody but Christian McCaffrey is banged up, and they're set to lose Brock Purdy for a significant amount of time, a handful of weeks. But hey, they just kept chugging along with Mac Jones and Kyle Shanahan running that offense. So we do get to relitigate the 2020 NFL Draft. Mac Jones, a much better fit than Trey Lance so far because he played one game. Any thoughts on the Cardinals or the Niners, who both are 2-0 based on 2 wins on 1-score games against what I think are inferior teams?
Well, for the 49ers, man, they needed to something to break for them because they've had to endure so many injuries over so many years. And it makes you wonder, I mean, what's happening with this team? What's the mojo? Or did someone pull out Joe Boo's rum? I don't know. But the 49ers have had an extensive amount of injuries, which limits you and stress you as a GM as you try to piece together some form of a roster. And then you think about the departures, the Debo Samuels, Brendan Ayuk, he's still not available yet. Juwan Jennings, I mean, I didn't even know he was going to play this past week, but he was able to play, and he was able to get a score. So when this team is fully healthy, they're one of the most dangerous teams in the league, but that's the biggest and the fundamental question. Can they be healthy for an extensive period of time? And history has shown, no, they can't. Now, getting to the 2-0 Arizona Cardinals, I think that's a little fool's gold, man, because you mentioned you played the Saints and the Panthers. Those are not world beaters. And those two teams, if I'm not mistaken, they're both, I think, 0-2.
Mm-hmm.
And
they are.
Again, beating 0-2 teams, I know it's early in the season, but still, the Panthers and the Saints, I mean, come on. Look, Baker won a game tonight against Houston, but how great of a division is that in the NFC South? Really,
right.
let's be totally honest. If we were to look around at the league, both conferences, and we look at all the divisions, that would be the least favorite, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I love the guy and his career, but if your top option in the red zone is a 30-year-old Hunter Renfrow, there's a reason you're 0-2. I'm sorry, Carolina. I love Tyrone McMillan. Great start so far, but other teams identify that as well. So that's why Hunter Renfrow essentially takes over for Adam Thielen, who again, at 34 or 35 last year, was a bit of a stretch for Carolina to call him their top pass catcher. So it is difficult to say that these teams can be taken seriously at any point. I mean, other than playing spoiler when hopefully the rapport with these young quarterbacks and their weapons and the defense gets a little stronger as the season goes along, but it's going to be a while. At least, again, we talked about the Giants gauntlet that they had going into the season. Russell Wilson, did himself a favor. Nobody else, though, because a 40-37 overtime loss that still puts the Giants at 0-2. We're not going to see Jackson Dart because of a couple of Russ moonballs, but we mentioned it. They get the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. They get the Chargers. Hey, they get the Saints, followed by Eagles, Broncos, Eagles, Niners. So we're going to be seeing the Giants losing a lot of games unless, we get a couple of 0-4 teams meeting. So, look, there's a handful of other 0-2 teams. I don't know if any of them stick out to you, Nick. I just have a better time talking about winners rather than losers, but I understand this is the National Football League. Like, look, the Cleveland Browns, the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets, the Tennessee Titans, they are who they are. The Kansas City Chiefs, 0-2, this is unfamiliar territory, but we just can't talk about the Chiefs every single episode. They don't have weapons. The running game is non-existent. I have to steal this from my buddy James Kelly for Big Head Bets. He said the Chiefs' offense is called the Frogger offense because Kermit the Frog under center just has to hop around and try to miss traffic because that's really all they can do right now on the offense.
Well, here's something that we can talk about. Two things. One thing is, let's go back to the schedule, right? And obviously the season started, the schedule is out. But how is it that when you think about the Giants and how difficult of a schedule that they have, right? And then how much of an easier schedule the Buffalo Bills have. Now, was that preordained for them to have such an easy schedule to help the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen finally?
I mean, does that count week 1 against the Ravens? I mean, what are we doing here?
I mean, it counts, but once again, they still have, I guess, from a strength of schedule standpoint, one of the weaker schedules in the league. And the whole idea was to throw you off the scent, Alex, and they did a good job, right? That's what the schedulers did. They said, we're going to give Buffalo the Baltimore Ravens game right out of the gate. So fans can think, well, yes, that was a tough schedule for the Buffalo Bills. No, it's not. Right? No, it's not. And here's the other thing. What about the quarterback injuries that we've seen thus far? There's a lot of top quarterbacks who are dealing with some early bumps and bruises that could derail their team as far as the early part of the season is concerned. What do you make of those early injuries?
It's really hard to sustain, the momentum coming into the regular season. I mean, it's really no different to the 49ers or the Bengals. Just you cannot build momentum and establish something sustainable over the length of the season if the guys that you work together with throughout training camp and the preseason aren't there. Or even furthermore, the guys that were out during training camp or the preseason, whether they were getting prepared or they were dealing with nagging injuries of their own. Having guys around and working together and building that rapport in the early part of the season, I think is the most critical thing of all. You understand that there's a timing to things where, it's better they're hurt now than at the end of the year when the games count more. But by the time you get to the end of the year, if that's the first time you're playing with some of these guys, you're not going to be playing your best at the right time. So, I know that we make a mountain out of a molehill every single week of the NFL. That's what they want. You're welcome, guys. We did it. But week 2 matters. Week 3 matters. Like, this is the time that you get to establish your identity and show other teams what you are and not be left to just having one pass catcher on offense being the entire thing. I think that's a huge explanation for a lot of these 0-2, these winless teams.
Well, it is, and even though it's early in the season, we're getting ready to go into week 3. And it's like, well, why are we making so much a stink as a fan base about teams who are 1-1 or 0-2? And even
right.
I would say the same thing for teams that are 2-0. There are some 2-0 teams that are really playing great football. There's some other teams who are undefeated that you're scratching your head like,
yeah, we definitely covered both ends for sure.
I don't really know. And I think here's the thing about it. By the time we get to week 5 of the season, things would have worked themselves out because unlike most of the other sporting leagues, there's not 82 games. There's not 100 games. It's a 17-game regular season. And every game counts. Every game counts. That's why, when I look at some of the teams who are playing well, like the Green Bay Packers,
yep.
That looks like a team that is saying, look, we have a lot of confidence. Whatever you thought of Jordan Love in the past, the Love boat is here, and we're looking to set sail. That's the
and Isaac's serving drinks. That's right.
There you go.
Yeah, out of it. Yes. Okay, Nick, before we get out of here, I just love the fact that we've been talking into the night and there's still football on. Yeah. The doubleheader for Monday Night Football, a huge benefit to us on the West Coast or Mountain Time. But what's your stance on having 2 games on Monday night? I love it personally, although I do have a point to make once I hear from you.
Well, from a spectator standpoint, it's great, right? Mm-hmm. From a league standpoint, it's even better. That's more face time. That's more money. That's advertising dollars. That's expansion of the brand. But if you are a player, maybe not so much. As far as the game is concerned. But the idea is that, you're playing on Monday night, you're going to have somewhat of a break. And it's not the same that like a Thursday night game. A Thursday night game is like an extra bye. Monday night, it was like you played on Monday night, so what? You got Sunday to get yourself ready, right? But as a football fan, man, you got to love it. And for me, we haven't reached like the true fall part of the year because that's my favorite part of the year. The fall, the leaves are falling, and Thanksgiving is around the corner, and I can think about sweet apple pie. I'm getting hungry right now. But to me, that's when football becomes great because now the league is saying, Alex, you want to watch a game? Do you got those streaming services?
Yeah.
Sorry for you, buddy. You got to go get them.
I will say not all Monday Night doubleheaders are created equal. I put this out on my social on Twitter earlier today.
Yes.
Looking forward to a Monday Night doubleheader tonight, which was great. I just can't wait until they do it a couple weeks from now. Except week 4, Nick, we've got the 0-2 Jets and the 0-2 Dolphins. And then the nightcap, and I'm sorry, this includes your Denver Broncos, the Jake Browning-led Cincinnati Bengals at Denver. This doubleheader is not the same compared to the doubleheader that we had tonight. So as much as I love it, as much as we are here talking about these games live in progress, I love it, except 2 weeks from now, we've got the hapless Jets and Dolphins, and then a Joe Burrow-less Bengals and your Broncos. Not all doubleheaders are created equal, Nick.
No, they're not. And in the business, there is such things, especially if you're broadcasting, when you talk about those dogs of a game, right?
Yeah.
Well, and the Falcons game last night, I mean, it was just like, oh, man, do I really want to watch this particular game? And I would go back and forth, but it wasn't as exciting because after week one, when we saw J.J. McCarthy not play as well in the first two quarters against Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams, to come back triumphantly in the fourth quarter was like, yes, it's exciting. And Kevin O'Connell said, we knew that he can do it. Yes, we believe. Only to come back in week two and not so much. So, but this is where we are. We have to take the bitter with the sweet.
He's Nick Ferguson. I'm Alex Hardy. That is back-to-back primetime games for Miami, by the way, because they go to Buffalo for Thursday night. And I just don't understand. Well, I mean, I guess I do understand. Your guy, Mike McDaniel, it at one time was an exciting offense, but we're a little concerned. We'll cover Thursday Night Football as well as the rest of the Week 3 slate right here with those guys. You can follow me. You saw my Twitter at @A_Hottie, Hahdee. He's Nick Ferguson at NickFerguson_25. You can check his content, putting out all the tape. Broncos special teams, he is here for it if that's what you need to get you through the rest of this week. So feel free. You can find us on our YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts if you have time to hear us or see us. So drop us a like, comment, subscribe. We're just thrilled to bring you NFL throughout the season. So until next time, what do you have to say for the people, Nick?
Always wash your hands.
Yeah. You sound like me talking to my 2-year-old.
And how many times your 2-year-old actually listened to you?
All the time. Every time. Every time. Every time.